IVM.
Folks, welcome and thank you for joining us on this episode of the Ideas Project, a limited series by Smallcase. I'm your host Anupam Gupta, and today we're joined by Mahavir Chopra, founder of Beshak.org. Beshak is a research-backed information platform which aims to provide the right tools to empower users to make well-informed decisions on insurance. Mahavir, of course, is an insurance veteran. Before Beshak, Mahavir was the chief business officer at CoverFox Insurance, a well-renowned online insurance company. All this and much more, all of this makes Mahavir the absolute perfect person to talk about our topic today, which is insurance and its growth in India. When and how this industry came about to be, how much is the insurance industry worth today, what's the size, how is it growing, what are the key drivers, did COVID even have an impact on it, and in what way? So stay tuned after the break to find out more.
We know you love fast food,
fast fashion,
faster payment.
lightning fast internet speed.
Then why not fast information?
On Think Fast, where we discuss the latest developments in the world of technology, business, marketing, pop culture.
With a side of sarcasm and my dad jokes, not just mine.
Not mine, Varun. My jokes are funny. So join me, guys, the funnier one, Suchita Salvan, co-founder of LBB.
And me, Varun Dugirala, the co-founder of The Glitch, as we think fast only on the IVM network.
Fresh episodes out every Wednesday.
On the IVM app, website, or wherever you get your podcast from.
Welcome back. Mahavir, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for doing this for our listeners.
Hey, thank you for having me here, Anupam.
Great, Mahavir. So let's start with the size of this industry because it's quite huge. I don't even know whether it's quantifiable. When was the first insurance policy written? So let's talk about a little bit of a background, size, history, etc. in India, of course.
Right, of course. So, the insurance industry is close to around $121 billion industry in India now. So, it's basically around 9 lakh crores worth of an industry today, meaning which basically comprises of life and health insurance. Life insurance essentially is basically products which are long-term savings products. Unlike what we all think, it's less of protection and largely it is about long-term savings products that life insurance companies mobilize from savings of people in the country, which is around 75% of the business. And the remaining 25% is basically general insurance, which is basically the one that covers other risks, right? Motor, car, and all those risks. So that is another, so that it would be basically a mix of both of these. 75% would be basically life and 25% is basically general. So that is the size of the industry. It looks quite big, but in the global context, it is not so big, right? Basically, I've put down some numbers so that, we have some context. So typically our share in the market, global share in the market is in the range of around 1.72%. This was recorded in 2020. So as a market, it looks big when we're talking about numbers. When we put it on a global context, it's not that great. It's not that big so far. Penetration is also quite low. Our penetration is in the range of 4.1% overall, whereas penetration globally, meaning the global number, benchmark number is 7%. So that's also somewhere we are basically smaller and the opportunity hence is bigger. Same is with the insurance density. So there is a number called insurance density, which is basically the per capita premium that Indian population pays, which is in the range of around about $78 for India, which is both put together, life and non-life. So it's around 60 and 18 in that kind of number, which if you compare with, let's say, industry, like if you compare it with, let's say, South Korea, it is in the range of around $4,000. Right. So that's the difference. In China, the number is around $400. So we are talking about 10x China and 100x in case of South Korea. So yeah, this basically gives some context in terms of that we've reached a good number in the 20-21 years of privatization. But at the same time, we are a long way to go. The opportunity is still not cracked. It's still open.
So the history, I mean, is there, I know that pre-privatization in the 90s, LIC is probably among the oldest life insurance companies in India. I don't know about health insurance. So how did the concept of insurance come about in India?
Yeah, so see, if you go to absolute history, meaning if you go to history, insurance is as old as community in India, right? If you see religious text actually, which is basically like Manusmriti and Arthashastra, there is a mention of insurance as a concept. right? Insurance has always existed across the world, and it's actually because it is just a community initiative, right? It's basically when communities come together, they share resources, they also share adversities, they also share possibility of adversities, and possibility of adversities is nothing but risks, which is nothing but insurance. So typically, insurance is as old as I would say as old as how communities have existed anywhere in the world, and hence also in India.
Very interesting. And if you look at the insurance sector, what do you think would be its role in the Indian economy overall?
Right. Yeah, this is very important for us to understand, because the way we look at insurance is very different from actually if someone is a newbie in this space and doesn't know about the space. The first understanding of insurance is that it basically covers risks, right? But the way insurance industry works in India is very, very different. Largely, the role that insurance has played in India, like you mentioned, that LIC was the first life insurance company that basically post nationalization became the life insurance company in India. The major role that it played is what mobilization of savings, right? That's the biggest role that insurance industry plays in the country, right? Like I said, 75% of the market today, the overall insurance market largely is long-term savings. So LIC's role has been to mobilize long-term savings, like the average savings of 15 years worth of commitment of savings that LIC mobilizes from currency, from other informal savings that people keep, right? So moving into financial markets is something that LIC has done. And then finally, it invests into government securities, which then helps in one way in nation building, right? So that's one major role that the life insurance industry plays. The general insurance industry in specifics actually helps risk-taking in entrepreneurship, right? It helps risk-taking in business, right? So typically, if you see last year jo IPL hua tha, in that BCCI took a 5,000 crores worth of cover on the IPL event, right? It covered weather, it covered things like non-show of one of the players because of illness. It also covered their fees and all those stuff. Also, a businessman as big as Ambani's, right, take insurance. Like I have a number which I put here because I couldn't remember that number. Reliance buys 3 lakh crore insurance policy for its petrochemical plants.
Wow.
So what this talks about the industry is that the industry actually helps entrepreneurship and helps basically entrepreneurs and businesses take larger risks, which probably they would have not been able to take, and they help with a transfer mechanism. That's the second area. And the third, which all of us know more about and which theoretically everybody talks about, is the risk which is basically related to actually risk management, right? Which is about personal risk management, which typically affects you and me, right? There also it plays a reasonably good role. I took out some numbers there also. So around death claims in 2021, FY 2021, life insurance companies paid around 40,000 crores of death claims. Right. So that's another area where it helps in the economy, because a lot of people would have otherwise been without financial security, and then that impacts, it has a ripple effect on the entire economy. Apart from this, employment is another area where industry helps. So there are around 2.4 million insurance agents that are attached to life insurance and general insurance companies that basically earn a living out of distributing insurance. Apart from that, there would be employees. So these are the major areas where the insurance industry actually impacts the economy.
Yeah, and how has the insurance industry developed over the past, Mahavir? Any, milestones, major moments on this? Yeah, so there are around 7-8 events that happened, which actually are like events which would have given spike to this industry. The biggest one is what we already spoke about, the nationalization that happened in the 70s, which basically brought in consolidated close to around, if I'm not wrong, 200 plus insurance companies, brought it down to a much lesser number, I think around 6-7 insurance companies. It basically formalized the entire industry, because it was otherwise run as a mom and pop shop also at that time. So that was actually formalization of the industry. Post which privatization happened in 2000, and I think that brought in a lot of innovation. Earlier, insurance was like a PSU paper that you used to buy. Typically, there was one kind of health insurance, there was one kind of, let's say, fire insurance, one kind of motor vehicle insurance. It moved into becoming a more innovative product with a lot of competition that came in. So that was basically nationalization that happened. Apart from that, FDI also played a very large role. So earlier, insurance companies from outside could invest only around 26%. In the years to come, there are two stages that came. Today, in 2021, I think government announced that now foreign companies can invest up to 74%. That's another spike that we saw. Pandemic is another area where there was a lot of awareness that got created, and a lot of even internally insurers got to learn a lot about the kind of risks that they will have to cover in the future, which probably they didn't know because it was a once in a 100-year event. Apart from that,
Another event I feel is a strong event was the IPOs that happened of private insurance companies, specifically ICICI Pru that happened in around 2016-17, and HDFC Life, SBI Life that happened in 2017. I think those actually brought in a lot of seriousness. So it was like 15, 16 years of privatization. And I think that brought them into the markets. And that basically gave a lot of aspirations to all other insurance companies and other entrepreneurs in the insurance space to also, look at that as their ultimate goal, or, becoming from a private company to becoming a publicly listed company that way. So I think these are some of the major milestones, and which actually I remember, which have led to good amount of growth in this space.
Yeah, very interesting, Mahavir, because I think 10, 20 years ago, there was not even one insurance company that was listed. And today, what are the names you said? In life insurance, you've got HDFC Life,
Yes.
SBI Life, of course, the big daddy LIC now listed, which is, I think that was a huge moment. And I think on the general or health insurance side, you've got ICICI Lombard. And you've got Star Health also, which listed, I think, last year. They were, so these options are also there. So folks, you can have a look at all these companies in case you're interested in knowing more about the insurance sector. Mahavir, let's go to the next segment of this episode. I want to understand how the insurance industry works overall, right? Because if I look at it, it seems that insurance is dependent on something like car insurance is dependent on automobile industry, Mediclaim or health insurance is dependent on, our health and on hospitals. Home insurance is dependent on real estate markets. And of course, a lot of this is also dependent on the savings that people make. You spoke about how insurance product also helps people save. So how is the insurance industry affected if any of these sectors or these factors that I just mentioned, if they take a hit, say, because of a recession, because of a pandemic? Let's talk about that.
Sure. So specifically, general insurance industry directly gets affected by other industries, right? Like you rightly mentioned, car insurance industry would definitely get linked to how many cars are on the road and how many cars are getting sold every year, right? This happened during the pandemic that people stopped buying cars. People stopped using cars, and hence the car insurance industry faced a lot of pressure, right? Because there was hardly anyone who wanted to renew their policy, and there were not many people who were buying cars, right? Interestingly, what happened for the general insurance industry, meaning this is something that people get a flavor of, is that at the same time, health insurance picked up. So fortunately, the same industry, which is general insurance industry, saw a big bump in the demand for health insurance, which was around in the range of around 15 to 70% for the entire space, right? So overall, the market grew at 8%. Otherwise, it used to grow at even a double-digit number. So there was an impact. So definitely, general insurance industry gets impacted not only on the growth numbers, but also on the profitability numbers. Like you said, during the pandemic, the health insurance companies did face pressure in terms of a lot of more claims than they could have imagined and planned. Same was for life insurance companies. Life insurance companies saw there are some companies which have reported 6 to 7 times more number of death claims that they got in 2021 compared to 2020 financial year, right? So definitely, because there is an underlying risk that you're covering, which could probably be a part of some other industry, or there is an underlying event that you're covering, which could basically be impacted by some other environmental issue, that definitely is a direct impact on the general insurance industry for sure. For the life insurance industry, it is largely similar to banking, or similar to fixed deposits or savings or mutual funds, where if there is more disposable income available in the market, and if depending on interest rates and depending on stock markets, they will see an ups and downs in their specific products that they are basically selling. So that is an overall take on how other industries or the environment impacts the insurance space.
So anything on the challenges, Mahavir? I mean, we've had, 2 years and counting of the pandemic. Anything else, including the pandemic, what are the key challenges of the insurance sector in India?
Yeah. So in my lens, meaning when I look at the insurance space, I think the biggest challenge that insurance space now is going to face, and I'm talking largely about retail right now, in the retail space it's going to face, is that there is a lot of dependence that has been on distribution. So when the insurance space actually got built, because there was a challenge in terms of demand creation, there was a lot of dependence on local distribution, right? Which is basically agents, which basically lent their trust to insurance companies so that it could be sold in nooks and corners of the country. Now, given that customers are become more and more aware, there will be a requirement of products that need to be created for customers. And you're seeing that on social media, we are seeing that on forums that we discuss things that you no more can continue making products for distributors. You'll have to start making products for customers, which will basically mean lesser prices, lesser commissions, better products. Right? That is something that the industry will have a very big challenge in the next 10 years for sure. Right? The other challenge is regulation, actually, because it impacts a lot of welfare, right, of people, right? Like, for example, a biggest example is during the pandemic, general insurance companies, before they could even evaluate whether they want to pay claims for COVID or not, IRDAI issued a mandate saying you have to pay claims, right? There was a condition by which general insurance companies could have denied claims for COVID, which is basically that when COVID hospitalization started, there was a lot of experimental treatments that were happening because nobody had a clue. Even the medical fraternity did not have a clue in terms of what is supposed to be done with the patients in terms of actual treatment, right? And now there's a specific clause in the insurance document which says that experimental treatments are not covered, right? There could have been an interpretation where some insurance companies could have come up and said that, hey, this is not payable because we didn't cover this risk, right? But IID came up with a mandate before that and said that, hey, all insurance companies have to mandatorily cover this risk, right? So this impacts directly the insurance space, right? Because there are certain things that the government will define saying that you have to cover, right? Similarly, there was a case of mental illness, right? Insurers have been trying to restrain from providing mental illness cover because of lack of data for years together, right? But there was a mental healthcare act that came in, and insurance companies now have to cover mental illness. They don't have a choice. So that's a very big challenge that insurance space faces, that there would be certain things that could come from a Motor Vehicles Act. It could come from a Mental Healthcare Act. It could come from IID. It could come from the government. Like the PM could announce something, right? So those kind of things happen. That's another challenge. The third challenge is more of I would say, a psychological challenge and a mindset challenge, right? India does not really believe in risk management if you look at it from a day-to-day basis when you talk to people, right? We have been a joint family setup, and overall that actually was a risk management setup that was created in the traditional times, right? So selling insurance, specifically protection products, to regular folks is a challenge because there is no mindset to actually buy protection products. There is a mindset to buy savings products. And that's in hindsight, when I look at it, I realize that why LIC, why these companies are largely into savings products, because there is a lot of work that insurance companies will have to do to drive risk management as a philosophy in the minds of Indians. So that's, I think, one more area which I need to look at it. Last is trust. I think there is a massive trust deficit that exists, which is a challenge that insurers face. Insurers have been able to solve that through distribution, because distributors basically lended trust to the insurer. Like a bank, when you're buying from a bank, you trust the bank and buy the policy, or you're buying from an individual agent who's your neighbor, you trust that person and buy. Because things are becoming direct, and customers are now looking at things direct and also wanting to know more about the brand. Trust deficit is something that insurers will have to significantly work to solve for, right? It cannot be something that cannot be solved for in the future, or cannot be avoided now going forward because of the transparency that we see because of media. So these are some areas which I see. Apart from this, there is data problems that exist in the country, right? Data is not very easily available for a lot of stuff, like healthcare data is not easily available. Financial data is something that you have to scamper and get from multiple places. Apart from, let's say, CIBIL, everything else is available at different places. So an insurance company which wants to evaluate a case or wants to evaluate a claim has to do a lot of hard work in terms of understanding stuff from various documents, papers, and data, which also impacts the pricing of products, because we are not able to control frauds. It also impacts the processes, and it also impacts claims and the claims processes, because it becomes more difficult to approve claims because you need more data, and because you need more data, it becomes more tedious for the customers to solve for. So these are some challenges that insurers face, and if these are solved, there will be a massive difference in experience, in efficiencies that will exist in the space.
Very interesting. Mahavir, what's happening globally and in insurance, that is, and anything similar from there happening in India as well?
Yeah. So globally, when I look at it, and my lens has mostly been on the digital side, and I see that being the biggest challenge or change that insurers are seeing across the world, and specifically incumbent insurers, which are traditional insurers, is that digital first, asset light startups are getting into insurance and becoming Insurtech companies, and basically lending insurance capacity from reinsurers and building businesses out of it, right? Incumbent insurers are basically under threat in a way that they could actually end up becoming balance sheet companies, right? Where they will only lend the capacity to take risk, but everything else, the relationship with clients, the experience that customers face, is basically worldwide moving to Insurtech companies instead of digital first companies instead of the older traditional insurance companies. This is one of the biggest discussion point or threat that traditional insurers face. And this is the last era where these traditional insurance companies can actually transform themselves, because these companies are getting well funded. Most of them have become unicorns, and probably if changes don't happen quickly, there could be major issues in terms of their existence, in terms of direct client relationship. They could become balance sheet companies, like I said. Apart from that, the other area is largely in the same space, but it's around personalization, hyper personalization, products becoming more customer centric. Like, for example, usage based car insurance has come into picture, right? Where basically you don't have to pay premiums for the entire term of the policy. Instead, you could actually pay for the usage and the kilometers that you're actually traveling. So I don't use my car a lot. So typically, I may have to pay lesser premium than someone who's traveling every year, every day, probably doing longer drives, right? So those kind of personalized products is something that you will see. Integrated products is something that globally people are seeing, which is not only insurance, but the entire risk management is being taken care in a single app. So your entire healthcare management and plus insurance is a part of one product, right? Which is how things will happen, because prevention and protection has to be integrated for it to be long-term viable and also become profitable and also become relevant on a day-to-day basis for customers. So these are some areas that we are seeing global trends on.
Yeah. Go into Insurtech just after this last question in this segment. Mahavir, what has been the role of the pandemic? I mean, it's when it came back in 2020 or 2019, because the virus is called COVID-19 after all. Yeah. What is the role and how did it change things? Good, bad, ugly, whatever.
Yeah. So positives and negatives that, like you rightly said, exist. Positives have been that awareness has improved. Customers now, like a lot of people say that customers don't need a push now. They just need a nudge to buy insurance. There is a lot of understanding of risk that has improved in the last couple of years because of what we saw. Right. And this is something that actually changed the ways people looked at insurance, specifically protection. So that is one area that I have seen. Apart from that, I think pandemic also brought in a lot of technology-based experiences which were not existent in the past, like agents. Traditional customers, like people who typically are not using internet for business or not using internet for work, they were not so familiar with basically buying a product over, let's say, a video call, or buying a product over discussing stuff, even commercial products, like meaning, let's say, a business insurance. People are not okay with buying it from, let's say, someone who's talking over a video call. They wanted physical meetings. This actually brought in a lot of efficiency, because now customers as well as advisors are more happy and also very, very comfortable with digital meetings instead of actual meetings. This has brought in a lot of efficiency. LIC in the pandemic brought in an app called Ananda. It was an app which was the first in its kind app that LIC created, where now agents can sell LIC products over a mobile phone, right, which never existed. And this happened largely because of the pandemic, because LIC realized that we'll lose on business because there's no tech that we have to sell products that agents can use to sell products, and customers will go to other competitors, obviously. And agents learned this. In fact, because of the Ananda app, there are talks in the industry which say that LIC saw a spurt in agents because of the availability of this app, and now nook and corner of people where branches probably very far for LIC agents started enrolling for agency with LIC. So LIC saw a spurt in growth of agents also. So these kind of things happened. A lot of stuff that no one could have imagined in the past.
Very interesting. Okay, Mahavir, we spoke about Insurtech. So last few questions now. Let's jump into it. It's apparently, it's a very big, it seems the second fastest growing fintech sub-segment, and probably due to low insurance penetration in the country, which we spoke about at the start of this episode. So growing at a pretty high rate also, Insurtech. So A, what is Insurtech? And B, what is causing this massive growth that the sector is seeing?
Right. Yeah. Like you rightly asked, Insurtech actually is a very loosely used word. Everybody calls themselves Insurtech today, but Insurtech actually will have to be those companies which are digital first. Right. They've started with digital as their first base platform, and then they're building products over it. So in my view, Insurtech companies are basically digital first companies which have basically now getting into insurance as a product, right? Not the other way around, where there are companies which have existed forever in the insurance space and now using technology to reach customers and basically give access to customers. So that's I would define Insurtech as. Your second question, sorry, I somehow don't remember.
The growth drivers for Insurtech.
The growth
What's
drivers.
driving this kind of growth? Yeah.
So the most important thing that we need to understand is the base of Insurtech has been quite small, right? When we say 57% growth, it's largely because Insurtech in India it has been small, right? And it has been growing. And one of the reasons why it grew very fast in the last 2 years was pandemic, right? A lot of people which wanted to buy insurance quickly went on the internet and bought it. Largely, it is about digital insurance comparison websites like Policy Bazaar that actually took advantage of this and did a very good job at it and basically helped customers buy insurance. So that's one area where they saw massive growth. Apart from that, if you look at it, the adoption of Insurtech actually improved within the industry also. So a lot of SaaS players basically got in, a lot of companies got funding because the entire approach towards Insurtech has changed so far. On the other side, basically, if you look at it, there's another perspective also that Insurtech today has only done a dent largely on sachet products, which are basically products that are bought while you are buying something else, which is like a 1,500 rupee product or 120 rupee product that you end up buying when you're buying something else. Like for example, on Amazon, if you're buying, let's say, a mobile phone and you buy insurance along with it, that's where we've seen good growth. And the other place that we've seen growth is largely car and bike insurance, right? So Insurtech, in a large extent, is been these three kinds of products: bike, car, and these products which are contextually sold by insurance platforms. This is only scratching the surface actually, because the larger markets that we spoke about at the beginning, right, which are savings products, which exist, is 75% of the market. And let's say health insurance, which is basically around 65,000 crores of market. We've just like scratched the surface in those cases. Like the health insurance share for Insurtech today would be in the range of sub 1%. Right. So we've not really scratched the surface for products which are actually larger products in the market, apart from car and bike insurance. So that's the perspective that I have. And for that to get solved, you'll have to solve for trust, like which is the biggest challenge that we spoke about, right? That is something that Insurtech will have to solve for. Transactions have been solved by Insurtech, and which is basically car, bike insurance and tick-based insurance products. Trust is what Insurtech will next have to solve if it really wants to grow bigger in the spaces that insurance is big at.
That was actually going to be my next question. Do you think that it can drive insurance penetration in India?
So insurance penetration basically largely is about four things. If you look at it, if you have to achieve insurance penetration, it will be about awareness, it will be about access, it will be about ease of purchase, and last, it will be about trust. Right? These are the four areas. If you're able to solve for these four things, largely Insurtech can then drive penetration. So if you look at the first two things, awareness and basically access, these two places Insurtech have done really well. Right. So awareness, if you see, a lot of money has been spent by Insurtechs on TV ads to bring in people on the internet and basically help people realize that you can buy things very quickly on the internet. So Insurtech has been able to solve for largely awareness and access. So if you see, a lot of money and investment is being done to solve for awareness, where large Insurtech brands are coming on mainstream media everywhere, like in IPL matches, everywhere, to basically talk about insurance. So access and awareness is being solved for. The other areas where Insurtech will have to solve is going to be ease of access, ease of use, and the other most important is going to be trust.
Okay, Mahavir, last couple of questions in this episode now. Has online or cyber insurance, I think, insurance against frauds and a whole lot of stuff that's happening online now, how has that been? Has it changed the landscape of the insurance industry, if at all?
So cyber insurance is still not seeing any uptake on the retail front, meaning individuals are still, I would not even know if individuals are aware of, that you could off the counter buy a cyber insurance product. Cyber insurance definitely has helped businesses a lot, and largely businesses which are internet led businesses, technology led businesses, are using cyber insurance on a day-to-day basis now to solve for risks that they are basically exposed to, right? So risks which are very, very new in the world, are also something that now you can cover through cyber insurance. So that's where we are today. On the online insurance, like I already mentioned, we have scratched the surface and there is a long way to go. And I think that's an area where there is a huge amount of scope and a lot of work that is going on. I think on the motor insurance side and on the bike insurance side, we're seeing good uptake and the share is very high. But other products, we've not even scratched the surface. Like I said, it's very, very low. And that's where most of the Insurtech companies will have to crack. And basically online insurance will have to develop is my take.
What is the national health stack? It sounds quite interesting. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so National Health Stack is basically a health stack that is being built by the National Health Authority. It's largely going to bring in a lot of data that is generated by healthcare providers and being made available to anybody who's wanting to use that data, right? So that's basically, I understand from the insurance context. How is it going to help insurance space? It's going to help insurance space massively, actually, because once this data is available, a lot of the costs that are involved in getting this kind of information and a lot of effort and time that goes in getting this information will become very easily available, because once the customer gives a consent and the data that is stored for that customer, this data can directly be transferred at a piecemeal level, whatever information that you want to share with the user that wants to use that data. If you give consent, you will be able to transfer that data to that insurance company in the insurance context, and hence be able to quickly process insurance. Either it could be insurance policies, it could be insurance claims, right? Frauds will go down. Because there will be a lot of data, like I mentioned as a challenge in the beginning when we spoke about challenges in the insurance space. I think Health Stack will solve for the challenges in data that exists in the health and life space, where there is a need for medical information about the customer. So it also brings in a lot of more products that could be brought in, right? Because today, let's say OPD health insurance products are not so easily available because of a lot of frauds that can happen today because of the industry being fragmented, the OPD healthcare industry. With Health Stack coming in, there is a lot of formalization of the space that will happen. And hence, basically, a lot more products can also be made and offered to customers. So it is definitely something that will impact heavily once it is put into action.
Yeah, and something that will impact heavily more is digital, right? We spoke about Insurtech, but it looks like the regulator, which is the Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority, seems to have become more open to the application of technology to this sector. And, I don't know, how has this itself accelerated the growth of digital insurance overall?
Right. No, so IRDA has been, in the last 10 years, what I have seen is that IRDA has been very, very welcoming in terms of digital journeys and digital experiences for customers. They've seen it as a future of the industry very clearly. One of the biggest examples is the launch of Sandbox, which allows insurance companies and other platforms to experiment on products which otherwise they would have not been experimented. And these are mostly products that are being built outside the regulatory framework, to experiment and understand that in the new spaces that exist today and the new world that exists today, how can newer products be brought in without regulation being a constraint, right? So regulator has been excellent in doing such kind of stuff. Another role that it has played, which is a passive role that it has played, it has not really interfered in the digital growth to a large extent. It has really been very encouraging. A very big example is, if I can take names of companies, is ACO, right? ACO is an insurance company that got built from startup entrepreneurs that were not from the insurance space in the true sense, right? Which I would have not imagined happening around 10 years ago. Right. So startups getting licenses to make insurance companies is a very, very big welcome change. In the recent past, with a new chairman who has come in, we've seen some very, very interesting things that have also happened, which are also something that people should know about. The Insurtech, I think the chairman came in and now in the first 6 months, he did a presentation for all Insurtech startups and people from the Insurtech fraternity himself. And he talked about the vision of, how digital insurance can propel the entire industry, right? This is something that has never happened, right? So these are the kind of things that are happening. The insurance regulator has recently launched a hackathon, which has a 20 lakh rupees prize. Wow. These kind of things I have not seen happening. So like rightly, this question is very valid. IRD is doing a lot to become technologically relevant and actually empower companies who want to drive technology and drive penetration. I think there's a lot of work happening there.
Sure. And let's wrap this up now, Mahavir. Any, parting words of wisdom for someone thinking of investing in the insurance sector?
Yeah, so I'm actually not an expert in recommending insurance investments in insurance space as meaning as a stock or as a product. I would sincerely ask people who are listening to this call to first consider buying insurance and protecting their family, and then look at insurance as a stock, right? And insurance as a product. So that would be my take. I would typically, young folks who are listening to this podcast would be very excited to look at insurance as a space to invest. But I would first recommend that look at financial security first, try to solve for risk management first. And then the next step could be, looking at insurance as an investment avenue, meaning insurance companies as an investment avenue. There, obviously, I'm going to be very bullish because I've been in this space all my life and I know nothing else other than insurance. So awareness point of view, regulatory point of view, environment point of view, and that digital will bring in a lot of efficiencies. Government is doing a lot of work on the health stack. I think in the long run, the insurance industry has only cracked the surface right now. I've been saying from the beginning, and hence there is a lot of growth opportunity. And if invested in the right kind of stocks, I think if you look at a long-term horizon, definitely there is a lot of scope in growing your wealth.
Sure. And folks, if you want to know more about the insurance sector, do check out the Insurance Tracker Smallcase, which is a portfolio of stocks that will benefit from increased investments in insurance that you can track and invest in with your favorite brokerage account. Links in the episode description and in the show notes. And that's a wrap on this episode of the Ideas Project. Hope you enjoyed this wonderfully insightful chat with Mahavir Chopra, and hope this helps you understand the insurance markets a little bit better. Mahavir, thank you so much for joining us on this episode and for sharing your wisdom with our listeners.
Thank you, Anupam. Great talking to you as usual.
Thanks, Mahavir. And folks, if you like this episode, do consider subscribing to the podcast and leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. This podcast is powered by Smallcase. We will come back with more insightful conversations to help you achieve a well-rounded investment portfolio. Until then, bye-bye. See you next for a brand new episode of the Ideas Project.
Everybody, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On the Life Manifestos, Arena shells out 10 worthwhile lessons on how to be self-dependent on an Independence Day special. On A Niche Thing, Anish is in conversation with Shivani Sambhare. She is the founder of The Art Insider, and they discuss how one can start an affordable art collection. On the Vox podcast, I talked to Carrie Hoffman. She is the CEO of PRX. We talk about the progress of the podcasting business across the globe. Really, really fun conversation. Appreciate Carrie for taking the time. On the finale of Do What Floats Your Boat, Nani speaks to Aman Gupta, co-founder and CMO of Boat Lifestyle. They discuss his entrepreneurial journey and inspiration. And on Cider Says It's Cock and Bull, Cyrus Ayushi, Vikramaditya, and Sriram talk about the attack on author Salman Rushdie. Once again, I'd like to remind you all, please do check out our merch. It's available on IVM Podcast website. Go click the shop tab and you'll be able to see our first collections of t-shirts. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Remember, we got a bunch of YouTube channels as well. And if you want to check that out, go to our website, ivmpodcast.com/YouTube. We have a list of all those channels. And remember, do tell a friend if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter. Word of mouth is one of the most important and best ways for us to get the word out about this podcast. Also, it's a way for you to have discussions about a podcast with your friends. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Boat Lifestyle, Checkpoint Software, Smallcase, and Intel vPro. Thank you so much for making this possible.
सफर, रास्ते, मंजिल और मुकाम अक्सर ये हमसे कुछ कहना चाहते हैं, पर हम हैं कि अपनी रोजमर्रा की जिंदगी में इन्हें सुनने से कतराते हैं। नमस्ते दोस्तों, मेरा नाम है केशव चतुर्वेदी और मैं आपको ले चलूंगा कुछ ऐसे सफर पर जहां आपको एक नया नजरिया मिलेगा सफर और मंजिलों को देखने का। आइए इन किस्से कहानियों में डूब जाएं। हर मंगलवार और शुक्रवार